Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the new Yankee Workshop. Today is part 2 of our Windsor chair project. Last time we built this base. Today we're going to show you how to carve the knuckles in these arms, fit the arm to this back post, make a crest rail, and complete the assembly of the chair. These chairs were inspired by ones built by Bill and Sally Wallach down in Pennsylvania. At the end of the program, Sally is going to share with us her wonderful finishing techniques to make them look 200 years old. So stick around. That's next, right here in the new Yankee Workshop. Funding is provided by... Well, this was my first attempt at a chair like this, and it was a bit challenging, but not beyond the average woodworker. If you'd like to build your own Windsor chair, a measure drawing will be available, including a source to get a steamed blank for this crest rail. And you'll hear more about that before the program ends. I want to start today on these graceful arms with these beautiful carved knuckles on the end. First thing I have to do is rough out a piece. So over here is some beech and a template that I got from Bill. I've traced it out, and I'm going to cut it at the bandsaw. But before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now you'll notice that the ends of the arms are built up to carve the knuckles. So I'm simply adding a piece of 1/2-inch stock, just glue and a clamp. Let's take another look at our prototype. This top rail is called a crest rail, and if you look down on it, you can see it has quite an elegant curve to it. Over here, I have a piece of steam-bent maple that approximates that curve. Now, it takes industrial equipment to do something like this, a steamer and some really strong steel band clamps to pull this around to form. It would be tough to do in the home workshop. Now here, if you look through the cross-section, you see it's narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. What I want to do is take a center line and my template for the shape, just bend it into place and trace it, and I'll cut it out on the bandsaw. I've mounted the crest rail here to the bench, and I have a little template to lay out the outline of the ear, and then a washer, a little circle that goes in there. Now, rather than watching me carve this, why don't we go back to Pennsylvania and see how master chair maker Bill Wallach gets it done. So now we've got the crest rail, and there's another bit of carving to do, right?
Yes. We're going to start out with this chisel, and we're going to go around the circumference of this circle by placing it on the outside perimeter of the drawing. You don't have to go very deep here, just around 1/8 of an inch. One thing you do want to watch when you start to cover the grain of the wood, when the chisel's in line with the grain of the wood, it will split the ear up very quickly.
So you're a little more delicate when you're parallel to the grain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can hit as hard as you want to when you're perpendicular to the grain. And you just want to start in this lower corner and start to chew the wood away.
You're just angling down from the outer line towards that center.
Yeah, whatever feels good to you. Okay, then I'll come down here to the bottom of the ear, this wide chisel. And I want to work that up. Now what we're doing is shaving the chisel marks. All right, next thing we want to do is follow this line. Which would be the boundary for our ear. Now we want to form a shadow in here. So I take my flat chisel and follow this line And it only has to be heavy enough that when you rub your finger over it, you can feel the difference.
Yeah, okay.
A nice piece of paper. Sand it smooth.
Now, just how perfect are you trying to get this?
Not perfect at all. It's just country furniture.
Mm-hmm.
It's furniture that they used in the garden and in the unobvious places in the house. It's just plain country furniture that was very simple and very comfortable.
After the glue set up on that piece that I added to the arm, I cut the shape out, and now I've just rounded it over a bit with the drum sander. Now for the carving, let's go back to master chairmaker Bill Wallach. He really knows how to carve those knuckles. Well, these knuckles are beautiful, Bill. You got to tell me the secrets. How do you do it?
Okay, first of all, we clamp the piece to the table, and we're going to do some lines here to show how we're going to take out a little channel to follow this channel, and then I'll turn it over and do the same thing underside, and we'll use this ball rasp to take this out.
Oh, that's a neat little tool.
Okay, next we'll turn to this short foam, and we'll start to do the work that I couldn't do with the rasp. And again, you go back to it with your fingers and feel it's smooth. Now this is where my magic cut file comes in. Now we want to just shape this a little further, make it a little bit smoother. I'm using a piece of 80 grit sandpaper to finish shaping. After I use that, I go to 120 grit.
Mm-hmm.
This will pretty much finish and take out all the scratch marks. Okay, just flipped it over on the backside norm, and we're going to complete this carving, this trough that runs through here.
So you want that to roll right around the bottom edge?
Yes, I do. So when the person who's sitting in a chair can visualize by putting their fingers the whole way around it.
It's kind of delicate work.
Yes, and you have to be very careful when you're doing this. You don't want to chip any of the inside of the volute away, and you don't want to tear the wood out. You have to make sure you're cutting it. Now again, we separate a little bit and bring this in from this side this time. And just kind of run it right up in with the carving. Okay. Knock down all the harsh edges. Wherever your hands touch on Windsor, you don't want any harsh edges or sharp edges or anything like that. You want it nice to the touch, and you can just sit there and
massage it.
Massage it, yes, that's a good word. Do what was intended to do with the Windsor chair. I believe they call them worry knuckles. Someone gave it that name somewhere along the line. So anybody who worried would sit there and worry and feel their knuckles.
Bill makes carving those knuckles look easy, doesn't he? Well, here's the ones that I made last night before I left the shop. And what I'm starting on today is to drill this hole to connect to that arm post. I've installed a ledger to support the arm more or less level and clamped a straight edge to the side of the post as a guide. Of course, Bill does this all freehand, but I wanted a little extra help. So now with that guide, I can line up the bit in this direction and this direction, and we'll get a pretty accurate hole. And I'll finish it off with a brad point bit so it doesn't blow out. Okay. Let's see how we did. That's going to be good. Now you'll note that the post is square where it intersects the arm, so I have to notch it. What I do is put a straight edge across the post, draw a line here, find the center point, and then square off of that. I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch here for additional fitting. All right, now I can scribe that pitch line with my compass. And that's an important line because it has to follow the post. Well, I've rounded over the edges of the arm, and I've also rounded over the back corner of this post. I put a mark right in the center, and I'm aiming for the other corner, the opposite corner, for a screw. Now, we're not sure if they used screws 200 years ago, but that's what Bill does, so we're going to do the same. Now I'm going to go to a slightly bigger drill and just enlarge the hole in the post. I won't glue this in place now. I'm just going to fasten it so that I can drill holes for the spindles that go under the arm. Now I'm ready to drill holes through the arm and into the seat for the spindles. I'm using a 16-inch long bit, and I like to use a stick of wood as a guide once again. Sort of line it up east-west, and north-south, and drill very carefully. Okay, now so I don't blow out the bottom, piece of scrap wood. Okay. Now I keep the shank of the drill bit centered in the hole that I just made and drill about 1 inch into the seat. I don't want to go all the way through. Both the back post and the arm post have a kerf, just like the legs, so I glue them in place and then wedge them with some beech wedges. And now for the arm, and this time I will glue it in place. The way Bill likes to install these short spindles is to put them through the arm, glued into the seat, then take a double-edged chisel, which I ground out of an old chisel, split it, and then put in a wedge with some glue. At this point, with the back post and the arms set and the spindles, we're ready to go back to work on the crest rail. So here it is upside down. I've done some layout, and the first 2 holes I'm going to drill are for the back post. I'll drill those about 1 inch deep. All right, let's see how that fits. That's good. Now, using a straight edge, I'm going to line up with the center lines of the holes in the seat and in that tail and mark the angle that I have to drill the hole. We have a drill bit and 2 extensions to make it long enough to reach from the seat up to the crest rail. So I set the point, in this case on the tail first, line it up with the pencil line on the rail, and drill a hole. Okay, now it's time to shape that crest rail. The back of it has to curve up, it gets thin as it moves by the ear. I like to use a block plane, a rasp, and some sandpaper. It takes a little while. final detail is this little score. A pair of dividers makes that easy. Just scribe it in. Now the spindles for the back are 5/8 inch diameter dowels, and they need to be tapered over about half their length down to 3/8 of an inch at the top. So a gouge, a rasp, and some sandpaper will do the job. Well, now let's put it all together. A dry fit. No glue yet. Well, now I just have to break it apart and do the final glue up. While I do that, I want you to take a look at Sally Wallach and see how she gets this wonderful old finish on these chairs. Well, Sally, your finishes on these Windsor chairs are just unbelievable. I've got to know some of your secrets. How do you get one of these knuckles to look like someone's been rubbing it for 200 years? You even show wear marks in these spindles where a man's belt might have rubbed up against it. You've got chips and dings where they've been moved around, and maybe someone even hooked their heels over that turning. Where do you get started?
Well, we start with an aniline dye.
Mm-hmm.
I use the powder form, and it's dark walnut, and mix it with the water.
You make a big jug of it.
I use a brush. I like to hand brush most of what I do. It can be sprayed on. If I have a large order, I will use the spray, but I just like the way it looks when it's hand brushed.
And that'll penetrate pretty deeply into that hardwood.
Yes, it gives it an older feel.
Instant antique.
Right.
Now here's a Windsor rocker.
Yes. The aniline dye has dried on this, and now we have put a coat of lacquer.
Why the lacquer?
Well, it helps to seal the dye and also prevents the paint from penetrating the wood too much. So now that's done, what's next? Then we start to paint. I use oil-based paints, alkyd,
and sort of a
semi-gloss.
Yeah.
And we start with we put 2 coats of paint on here. We started with red, and then covered that with a black green.
Well, this seems a little rough to me. Is that okay?
Yes, that's just fine. Now we go on to the next step. And then we do the first distressing.
What have you done to this chair? I mean, it's all rough in spots, and it's almost like it's blistered. How did you do that?
Well, we use a semi-paste paint stripper.
So where do you decide where to put it on?
Well, we put it on the places of the chair where over a period of 200 to 250 years there would be natural wear. For instance, your leg would hit the front of the seat. You might kick the bottom of the chair, or rub your hand on the handholds. On the back, your back might rub against it, your head might hit at the top.
So you've studied antiques to see exactly where this happens.
Yes.
And how long does this stripper have to sit on it?
It stays on for about 24 hours, and then we scrape it off.
You're going to take it off now?
Yes.
Okay. So you do some of that.
We start to remove.
Okay. So we see a little bit of the red, and we see a little bit of the dye.
Right. And after it's scraped, then we have to take steel wool. I use a heavy grade steel wool and rub the entire chair from top to bottom.
So now that's going to get rid of all the roughness.
Yes.
And it's starting to look pretty good at this point. Is that it?
Yeah, it starts to. But now we need to add a 3rd coat of paint.
Wait a minute. You did all this work, and now you're going to cover it up again?
I'm going to cover the whole thing again.
And what color will you use now?
Well, on these we used a black as the top coat. These have been sitting for 5 days, drying, and they're ready.
I can see where you stripped off the paint. It's sort of telescoping through.
Yes.
So what do you do next?
Well, now Bill Wallach has to distress them for the final time.
Now Bill's gone off to a separate room, which is sealed off, and he's got some walnut shells that he's put in a tank, and he's going to use some compressed air to basically do the same thing you would do to sandblast something. Oh, that worked great. So those walnut shells really just took away the thinnest layer of the paint on the piece.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
We take it back to Sally.
Now, Sally, you're scraping the top of those buttons off. The sandblaster didn't take the paint off those?
No, there wasn't any stripper on them, so the paint didn't lift.
But you do want to show wear there.
We want to show some wear there because they would normally push up through the seat and the paint would come off.
Okay, and what's next?
Next, we stain the entire piece.
Again?
Yes. We put this is a regular stain now. This is not the aniline dye.
So it's just an oil-based stain?
An oil-based stain.
And you're going to put that over everything, including the paint?
The entire piece, right.
Wow.
Put it on even the underside of the seat.
And do you rub it off after it sets for a while?
I rub it off as soon as I'm finished covering everything. I cover the entire piece and then wipe it off.
Now, what's the color on the stain here?
This is also a dark walnut color.
Now, it seems to me that none of these steps take very long to do, but what extends the process is the drying time. It's almost a day after every step.
Right, and depending on the weather, it can be more than a day. Humidity is very important. If it's a high humidity, it might take 2 or 3 days between steps.
So now just a clean rag and you rub it all off again,
right,
or most of it off.
Taking most of it off, but you see what it does.
Yeah, it makes it start to look a little bit brighter and richer. It brings out the highlights.
Right.
Well, that looks great, Sally. So if we let it dry, is it going to be ready for me to take it home?
Oh, no. Now we have to wait about 24 hours, and then I apply a coat of paste wax.
And just buff it out?
Yes.
And how often would you wax it after that?
As often as you want. You don't ever have to wax it again. If you don't want, just dust it.
It's great. Thanks for all the information.
Thank you.
Oh, don't these look inviting after a long day in the shop? Ah, Bill, they're so comfortable. Sally, they look so great.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all your experience on Windsor chairs with us.
Well, thank you for coming. Come back anytime.
All right. Well, when I know that you're just a phone call away, should I run into trouble back at the new Yankee workshop?
Okay.
Well, here are the chairs that I built, completely finished using Sally's techniques. The final step is a little bit of wax. Look at how those knuckles shine and show the age. This is a project that should be on every woodworker's wish list. If you have access to a lathe and a drill press and a few hand tools, you can build a chair like this. If I can do it, you can do it. So come on, build yourself a couple Windsor chairs. Now let me show you what we're going to build next time. It's called a lowboy, made out of cherry. It has nice brasses, a carved fan in the center drawer, these turn drops, and ball and claw legs. I know what you're thinking, carving legs? That's part of the story, so tune in next time and find out right here in the New Yankee Workshop.
Funding is provided by home video or a measured drawing of the project you've just seen, please call 866-545-9708. Additional information is available at newyankee.com. Home video or a measured drawing of the project you've just seen, please call 866-545-9708. Additional information is available at newyankee.com.